Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and for today's episode of Pokke's Classroom, it's probably one of my most fun and most informative classroom that I've done for a really long time, ever since I've done Pokke's Academy, which is basically the only speed guide you will ever need in your Honkai starrail career. Back when I first started on YouTube, I actually did a speed guide like really long ago, but this is gonna be with like the more updated, more condensed knowledge to the point where even a dummy can understand it, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Have you ever wanted a real-life 3D waifu? Okay, unfortunately, you can't get that, but with gamer subs using code Pokke with 10% off, you can also get your very own waifu merch. That's crazy, chat. Like, one of my favorite flavors. I mean, I'm not a simp, but like, it genuinely tastes good. So I just wanted to try titty milk, and then we'll see how it goes. It kind of reminds me of Yakult. If you guys ever tried Yakult before for the Singaporeans, right? Use code Pokke for 10% off gamer subs, right? That's code Pokke for 10% off gamer subs. Thank you for sponsoring today's content. The only speed guide that you will ever need. So generally speaking, for speed guide, the main things that we need to look out for is basically the speed thresholds, the action value manipulation, and as well as some of the special conditions, specifically speed buffs, right? How does speed buff affect your total speed? And this is going to be applicable to pretty much all and Memory of Chaos stages, 0 cycle, 10 cycle. The fundamental principle, they are exactly the same, right? So just a good thing to know, and it's gonna be useful for pretty much all units in the entire game, not only limited to Sparkle, but also includes Tingyun, Bronya, and pretty much everyone follows the same concept with regards to speed tuning. It's just that with the release of Sparkle, speed tuning has been such a hot topic nowadays that a lot of people want to find out exactly why do we want, like for example, 160 speed on Sparkle, right? Or some people are going for like the slow Sparkle and that kind of stuff, right? So hopefully with this video, you guys will understand exactly what you guys are thinking before committing to set speed, right? So the first thing that we're going to be talking about today is definitely going to be about the speed threshold, right? So this is the table that I've done up on myself using a simple Excel formula, very straightforward, right? There's basically three things to be focused on there, right? The distance, the MOC action value, as well as the number of cycles / action your unit can take. Now, I know this looks a little bit complicated, but at the same time, this graph shouldn't be very unfamiliar for my viewers, especially for those of you guys who are like sweaty meta players trying to 0 cycle, right? So this graph shouldn't be unfamiliar here, but I just want to basically explain how you get these numbers, because usually, most of the time, you just look at the numbers and be like, okay, cool, but like why though, right? So hopefully you understand what is going on behind the numbers over here, right? So speed is basically equivalent to the distance divided by your MOC action value. It is as simple as that, right? So for example, if you want to go twice on the very first cycle, you're gonna divide 20,000 by 150 to get your 133.33333, which is round up to 133.4, right? So why is it 20,000 divided by 150? It is because the amount of distance your unit needs to travel, it has to be 10,000. So pretend like in Honkai starrail, the entire game, your unit is like running a track and field, right? The field itself, where your unit is running around, it is 10,000 meters. The speed is basically how fast your unit is gonna go at this 10,000 meters, right? So to complete one action for a unit is 10,000 meters. So to complete two actions is 20,000 meters, right? So how much speed does your unit need to complete 20,000 meters? Now that is gonna be 20,000 divided by 150. Now why do we divide by 150? Is because that is the very first action value for your MOC, right? So for your MOC wave cycle 1, it's gonna be 150. Subsequently, it's gonna go up by 250, 350, 450, blah 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 blah. So you can just take it accordingly from there, right? So now that you have understood this concept, so the same concept can also be applied for 4 cycles, 4 actions in 2 cycles, right? So that is gonna be 40,000 meters because you want to complete 4 actions, right? So 40,000 in 2 cycles is as simple as 40,000 divided by 250, because now you can see the action value over here is gonna be 250, right? So that is gonna give you the 160 speed, and which is why interestingly, it is not 161. It is 160, right? So if you want to go 4 actions in 2 cycles. Subsequently, for the real, okay, technically not real trap, but if you guys want to go 3 cycles, 4 cycles, 5 cycles, you just essentially divide it accordingly. So for example, if you want to go 6 actions in 3 cycles, it's going to be 60,000 divided by 350 over here, right? Because that is going to be the amount of action value you're going to gain from 3 cycles, which is going to give you the number 171.4. So hopefully everyone still understands this. So hopefully you guys are still with me, right? It's basically the number of action you want to go is the meters, right? 1 action, 10,000 meter. 2 action, 20,000. And you just divide it by the MOC action value. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, blah, 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 right? But there's one minor note is that if you successfully clear a 0 cycle on the first wave, the second wave will still be counted as wave 1.
Editor here. Apparently, this AV condition will hold true to the next wave regardless if you 0 cycle the first wave.
This is only applicable for players who are trying to go for the 0 cycle clears, right? So that is why if your DPS, if your supports, they're at 133.4 speed, if you manage to clear a 0 cycle on the wave 1, they could still go twice on wave 2. You might have noticed this phenomenon happening, especially if you're a Jingliu or a Blade main, because most of the time you're probably tuning your Jingliu and Blade to 134, 133 speed. And you will notice they still go 2 times on the second wave if you 0 cycle the first wave, right? So this is just something for the 0 cyclers to take note. If you 0 cycle the first wave, subsequent wave is going to be still counted at the very first 150 action value, right? So that's basically that. Now, with that explained, we will now move on to action advance. I'm not exactly sure how many players actually understand this concept, but this is like the most basic and the most easiest way to understand this, right? You think of action advance as distance advance. Think of it, you know, like I said, your unit, they're running, right? They're running on the track. The track is 10,000 meters, right? To complete one action, to finish 10,000 meters, you have to run 10,000 meters with the amount of speed you have. So what action advance essentially does is like a little boost. It's like a little platform that allows your unit to just bump up. It reduces the amount of distance they will need to complete one action. So now you can see that with this example of here, your Vonweg, which is 40% action value advance, is basically equivalent to 4,000 in the distance, right? So 4,000 distance, and this happens one time. It only happens on the very first wave. So your Vonweg will not trigger again on the second wave, right? For your 24% dance, that's 2,400 distance. For a 25% 4-piece ego set, which is the win set, it's going to be 2,500 distance. And Bronya's talent, it works exactly the same. It's going to be 3,000 distance, right? So with this in mind, you can now apply it to the math. So, assuming that we have a Vonweg equipped, right? If you have a Vonweg equipped and you want to go 2 actions in the first cycle, you simply take 20,000 minus 4,000. Because your Vonweg gives you a 4,000 distance bump, right? A little bit of a head start. So because of that, you're now dividing 16,000 by 150, which means your DPS or whatever unit actually only needs 106.7 speed to go twice on the very first cycle, right? And this can also be applied for units that want to go thrice on the very first cycle, which means it's going to be 30,000 minus 4,000 divided by 150, which will give you the speed of 173.4. If you do not have this Vonweg, if you do not have this 40%, this 4,000 distance bump, it's gonna be 30,000 divided by 150, which gives you the speed of 200, right? That's why you need 200 speed to go 3 times on the first cycle, which is very, very difficult to obtain. So most of the time, no units in this game will achieve this 200 speed unless you have absolute god tier relics. And if you don't, we usually use these action advance means to propel our units forward and still let us hit 3 actions on the very first cycle. And then the similar concept can also be applied if you want to go 5 actions in 2 cycles, right? So if you want to go in 2 cycles, it's going to be 50,000 because you want to go 5 times. Then you minus, perhaps you use a Vonweg and you use your win set 2 times. So that is going to be a total of 9,000 distance, right? 4,000 plus 2,500 plus 2,500. So you minus everything, you divide it by 250, and that's your speed, 164. Right? So these are basically how you can apply action value advance to finding out exactly how much speed you need and how much action you can take within those cycles. And then just a little quick like interesting thing, for your Bronya's hyper speed, right? The hyper speed Bronya build, for those of you guys who still don't understand how it works, you basically want her to go basic skill, which means she's gonna cast this 3000 distance one time, right? It is impossible for Bronya to go 4 actions in a single turn, and it doesn't make sense for a Bronya to use 2 basic and 1 skill. And if you're gonna be doing that, you might as well just use a normal Bronya, right? So a basic skill in one cycle with Von Weg, that's why you see 30,000 minus 7,000, which is 3,000 from the talent and 4,000 from Von Weg. She will only need 153 speed to basically go 3 times on the very first cycle. Right? So that is basically that. I will be demonstrating some real life applications so that you guys can see exactly how it works in combat, right? So that is that for action value advance. Now, moving on to the next part, which is almost our last part already, actually. This is gonna be split into 2. Your speed buffers, right? There's 2 different categories: permanent speed buff and temporary speed buff, right? For your permanent speed buff, it's basically Run Mei, as well as your E1 Hui, right? E1 Huo, sorry. Your Run Mei has a permanent 10% speed buff. Note that this 10%, it is not your total speed, it is your base speed, but this is not a very difficult concept to grasp. So previously, right, these were the amount of speed you will require for the amount of actions you take within those cycles. So with Run Mei, the speed you need is now minus 10% of your unit's base speed. So for example, if your unit speed here, if you need like 173.4 speed to go thrice in one cycle, you now effectively only need 163 speed to go thrice, assuming that your unit's base speed is 100 and 10% of 100 is 110, right? So that is how it works. This is the exact same concept for Hue's E1, because E1 Hue with a talent active, you instantly gain the speed buff from the start of battle, right? But yeah, so these 2 are the only 2 permanent speed buffs that we have. And moving on to another example. Now this is pretty much already at our final example. Like I said, this is a very short lesson because I try to condense everything as much as possible. But this is also the more difficult, potentially more difficult concept, right? I try to dumb it down, but it is still a little bit confusing. This is the temporary speed buff, which means that the speed buff is not permanent. It wears off after some time. So I'm going to be using Tingyun as an example here, right? Tingyun has a 20% speed buff after you cast her skill. So we will adjust the action value based on the post buff speed. And essentially, for a unit to complete the actions, you have to hit the action value. For example, in wave 1, you have to be 150 within the distance traveled, which means that for 30,000 meters, your 3 action value combined, they have to be less or equal to 150. Otherwise, they will not be able to finish it in one cycle. So we are going to be using this example because Tingyun, after you cast the skill, you get 20% speed buff, right? So for 2 turns, Tingyun won't have any speed buff. So we are going to be assuming that the Tingyun shown over here, is going to be 174 speed, right? This Tingyun is at 174 speed. No dance, no non-whack. It's strictly just 174 speed. So no speed buff for 2 turns because we will use our basic attack twice and our skill once, right? So then the action value we generate is going to be 20,000 divided by 174 because it's 10,000 divided by 174 plus 10,000 divided by 174, right? So you're going to get a total of 114.94 action value. Then we do get a 20% speed buff for 1 turn, which means her base speed is 112. You multiply by 1.2, which is 20%. Then you plus 62. You plus 62 because this is the additional speed that I gave Tingyun from her relics, right? From her speed boost and all the speed subs. You will get a new speed of 196.4, right? So you can see over here, this part, Tingyun, after casting a skill, the speed increased, right? You see that the action value, it increased from 58, it went up to 51 because she has traveled more distance since her speed is now higher, right? So exactly how many action value you gain, it is shown over here, right? With the new speed, you can see that the action value is 10,000 divided by the new speed, which is 196.4, which gives you 50.91. Exactly the same as the one over here, right? 51, they just round it up, right? So your total action value traveled, right? Your total action value combined from 2 turns of no speed and 1 turn with speed is 114.94 plus 50.91, which is equivalent to 165.85. And this, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, is more. It's more than 150, right? Because it is more than 150, Tingyun, she cannot go 3 times in one cycle, right? You have to be within 150. Essentially, she's too slow, right? She's too slow. She couldn't finish 150 action value in time within these 3 actions, right? But with Dance and Von Weg, she can do this, because then it will buff her up, right? It will reduce the amount of action value she will need to travel, right? So this is the exact same concept for your R-star speed buff, your Yukong speed buff, your all your speed buffers follow this exact same concept. Now, I know you guys will definitely have questions about this, so I will be showing you guys in-game as well as answering any questions you guys have. But that is basically how it goes. I hope you guys are still understanding and I hope you guys are still following me, because I really tried to make it as digestible as possible, right? So that is basically it, guys. There's nothing else to it, right? So in summary, speed tuning is a concept that is not really needed to complete Honkai Star Rail's content, but it will drastically improve your playing experience when playing Honkai Star Rail, right? Because you can now clear more difficult stages with suboptimal relics, because you are now speed tuned properly. You can also stop chasing unrealistic speed thresholds, right? Nobody needs to chase the highest possible speed as humanly possible, right? There's no reason for anyone to chase like, oh my god, I need a 180 speed, I need a 190 speed, because if I don't get it, I'm just trash, right? You don't have to. As long as you hit each individual thresholds, you're good to go, right? And lastly, if you guys understood the lesson so far, you can then flex to your friends on how smart you are as a Pokke's villager, right? So before we wrap it up, I'll now be essentially showcasing to you guys exactly how each of these things work, right? So yeah, now it's gonna be the showcase session. All right, so my Sparkle here, she is perfectly speed tuned to go thrice on the first wave, because the formula needed to go thrice on the first wave is, like I mentioned, 30,000, right? You want to go 3 times is 30,000 distance. 30,000, right? Then you divide it by 150, which is basically 200 speed. You would normally need 200 speed to go thrice in one wave. Now, I've specifically equipped her with Dance, such that we do have this 24% action value advance, right? So after equipping Dance with a 24% action value advance, you simply minus 2,400 from your 30,000 speed, and this is going to be the new speed you will need, right? 30,000 minus 2,400 divided by 150, you will now need 184 speed to go thrice. But some of you guys might actually, yo, but MrPokke, you're only at 175 speed, how the hell can you go 3 times? That is where Ruan comes into play, right? She is literally the speed threshold goddess, right? This talent alone, it basically enables us to hit the benchmark without hitting the benchmark. So now with this additional 10% speed buff, Sparkle's base speed is 101. So 10% of this means we do get an additional 10.1 speed. So 10.1 speed added to 175, we will get 185.1. Although there's some decimals here, it's not shown, but that's basically. So this will demonstrate how my Sparkle can go thrice on the first wave. And now I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how it will work, right? So without further ado, let's just show you guys exactly how it works. All right, we're just going to ignore this. So you can see now Sparkle, this is the first turn. She's just gonna auto attack, right? You auto attack skill, it doesn't matter, right? So we're just gonna, all right, we're just gonna use the skill, right? So we can get the ultimate. And just pop this. Yep. Okay. All these things don't matter. Just gonna keep basic attacking. And now you see, without Dance, without the power of the 24% 2,400 distance, our Sparkle only goes twice, right? So this shows that if you only have 185 base speed, you are not able to go thrice on the first cycle. It's not enough. You need 200, right? You need 200 to hit this. But by the power of Dance, when you press the ultimate, you can see that she advances herself up again to 42 action value right before the turn ends, because you can see that the next cycle is at 44, right? It is right at the very edge before she couldn't hit 3 action. And this will perfectly show how action value advance works and how speed tuning works in this game. So now with the power of Dance, my Sparkle press this ultimate, bumps everyone up, right? And then we just go again and again and again, and then Baru's gonna hit again, and then Sparkle, she's gonna go thrice on the very first wave, right? That is pretty much it. Right? So that is the Sparkle example. Hope you guys are still following. Now I'm going to show you guys the Bronya example, right? The Bronya example. So Bronya, like I mentioned just now, because she does have the talent, right, that allows her to go forward faster, we only need 153 speed if we are running her with Von Weg and basic attack 1 time, right? Because it's going to be 30,000 minus 4,000 from Von Weg and minus 3,000 from the talent. which means she will only need 153.333333 speed, right? So now I'm gonna tune my Bronya to 153 speed. All right, so now my Bronya is at 153 speed, equipped with the two-piece Von Wek, right? Two-piece Von Wek. So we're now gonna go ahead into battle and see exactly how she can move thrice in one cycle. Okay. Oh, wait, let me just take out Runmei, because that Runmei gives us the speed buff, and we don't even need the speed buff. So now her effective speed is just 153, okay? So I'm just gonna pop this, go. Okay. So our first turn, our Bronya, she's gonna auto attack. And this auto attack is gonna increase our action value by 3,000 meters, right? Because if we don't use basic attack, if you use skill, you can see that it's only 65. Right? But if we use basic attack, this number is lower, right? It's lower. So now we're just gonna basic attack. And we just do some random stuff, right? We just do some random stuff, Yep. Then you can see, if we cut our skill, she's gonna be right at the edge once again, chat. Do you guys see this? She's right at the edge once again, because at 69, it's gonna be the next action. And now because we hit our 153 speed, we are right at the edge before we can't hit 3 actions in the very first cycle, right? So hopefully with this example, you guys can also see how you can build your own, very own hyperspeed Bronya. But like I mentioned just now, the downside to this build is that using Von Wek, this Von Wek, it only applies to the first wave, right? Because as you guys would have seen from the effects of Von Wek, let me just go here again real quick. This Von Wek piece, it's only for when you enter the battlefield, right? So it only applies to your wave 1. For your second wave, this thing is no more, right? You no longer have this 40% action value advance, which means that our Bronya, she can only act 2 times in the next cycle, right? For a total of 5 times. If you wanted to consistently act 3 times, then she would need to hit 184 effective speed, minus the amount of talent that she would need, which is whatever you get, right? Okay, actually the talent is a little bit higher because I just realized my Bronya is fucking E3. But I just minus accordingly. It works exactly the same, right? So actually we have a little bit of leeway over here. So yeah, I think with that we've pretty much came to the end. Oh, or one last thing. Wait, Tingyun. Okay, one last example to show everything, just to tie everything up. It's gonna be Tingyun. So we're gonna get Tingyun over here. All right, my speed is 169. Let me just try to tune this to 174. Yep, okay, there we go. All right, so now my Tingyun is at effectively 174 speed. Notice that this is a plus 62 because these are from the relics. Note that your speed increase, all of the speed buffs in this game, Runmei speed buff, Tingyun speed, all the speed buff, it is taken from your base speed, right? It is not 20% of your total speed, because if that is the case, she's gonna be fucking broken, right? So now I'm gonna be showing you guys exactly how this Tingyun build, she cannot go 3 times in one cycle because she simply does not have enough, right? So we're just gonna go in. So we're gonna go in. Pop this. Bada boop. Okay. Alright, so we're gonna have 1 turn using our skill to get a speed buff. But when you use this speed buff, it's irrelevant. As long as you use a speed buff 1 time, you have a speed buff effective speed of... This is now her effective speed, right? She is now at 196 effective speed because of the speed buff. So we're just gonna continue. Just gonna do this. It's gonna hit. Blah blah blah. Cool. Argenti, just do something else. Bailu goes. And you can see she is not enough, unfortunately, right? She is still around like 14 action value away from hitting the amount of action value required to go thrice on the person. And even when casting speed buff, it is still not enough, right? She needs to basically hit 150 action value within 3 actions, right? And this perfectly shows the amount that I showed you guys on screen just now during the presentation. So you guys remember this? You guys remember this screen over here? You see, total distance traveled, total action value traveled for 2 turns without speed buff is 114.94. 1 turn with speed buff is going to be 50.91. Combined total is 165.85, which is more than 150. And this is perfectly encapsulated here because she is quite literally around 14 away from going 3 times on the very first wave, right? So yeah, that is basically it. I think I've pretty much showed everything that I need to show in speed tuning, right? So, and with that, we've come to the end of today's content. If you guys have any further questions, leave them down in the comments below, or you can join on my Discord at Pokke's Village, right? discord.gg/Pokke's Village, where we're a very active community talking about Honkai Star Rail on a daily basis. If you guys want to check out my stream, that's going to be twitch.tv/MrPokke, as well as on YouTube. I'm streaming to both platforms at the same time. Schedule will be uploaded on Discord, although I am streaming almost every single day, especially since I'm going to be quitting really soon, right? So, that's all I have for today. All the best for Sparkle Pools, all the best for Sparkle speed tuning, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. I genuinely cannot believe this shit. I genuinely cannot believe this shit. I genuinely cannot believe this shit, guys. Did I say how I genuinely cannot believe this shit? I genuinely cannot believe this shit, guys.